The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you rather not say to him, 'Prepare supper for me, put on your apron, and serve me while I eat and drink? Later you may eat and drink'? Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Holy and loving God, write a message on our hearts. Bless us, direct us, send us out, living letters of the word. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. I fondly remember a story that my mother, hi Mom, don't be nervous. I fondly remember a story my mother often told about one evening when my parents left me with a babysitter. Several hours later, they arrived back home, and I was perfectly fine, except for the large goose egg that was on my head. And according to the sitter, I had fallen up the stairs. Not down the stairs. Most people fall down the stairs, with gravity. But I had managed to fall up the stairs. And this klutz-tastic feat is not surprising to those who know me, for I fall down all the time, over roots, over dogs, while dancing. My hands are covered with scars from the number of times I have cut myself while preparing dinner. I should have stock in Band-Aids. One parishioner at 8 removed their sports coat to share all of their various scars from a lifetime of mishaps. That was very illustrative, but you don't need to do that. I'll take your word for it. But if we are honest, all of us fall or stumble or goof in some way or another. Some of us can't type an email or a text without making a typo. Some of us always miss the turn when we're driving to Aunt Edna's. Some of us can never hit the fairway on 16. And stumbling is not an exclusively physical predicament. As a matter of fact, more often than physical, we find ourselves stumbling in a psychological, social, economic, or even spiritual fashion. And these inevitable stumbles aren't always minor. They can be sometimes major potholes on the road of life. Several years ago, Mother Teresa's personal letters were published. And in those letters, she revealed that for several decades, not just a few days, but decades, she felt no presence of God whatsoever, neither in her heart or in the Eucharist. In the tradition of St. John the Cross or Evelyn Underhill, she endured a classic dark night of the soul, when one still holds fast to the belief that God is real and important, but the presence of God is not discernible. Teresa's important and impactful ministry to the poor and the marginalized continued during that time, but her personal life of prayer was bleak. Father James Martin commented on her struggles and observed that Teresa was posthumously engaging in a ministry to people who had experienced some doubt, some absence of God in their lives. And do you know who that is? He said. Everybody. Atheists, doubters, seekers, believers, everyone. Stumbles are a reality we all face as fallible human creatures. We stumble in our relationships or jobs or with our friends or with our family. There can be times when life seems so fairly uneventful, and then all of a sudden we are tumbling head over heels with little control over where we are going or where we might land. Stumbles can occur because of our own mistakes and misjudgments, someone else's folly or design, or a seemingly random and unexplainable turn of events. And these mishaps can leave us injured and angry and wondering, why did this have to happen to me? Why do I have to suffer? Why must I endure this darkness and this fear? My sister-in-law is an emergency room doctor in rural North Carolina, and she often says that none of her patients deserve what happened to them, but they certainly did earn it. Jesus was aware of this fact and declared it to his friends and his disciples just a few verses before our gospel reading from Luke today. I'm always curious why those people who chop up the Bible for our Sunday readings, they are certainly wiser than I, but they often seem to leave out part of the story. Jesus says, occasions for stumbling are bound to come, so be on your guard. And then in response, the disciples exclaim, as we heard this morning, increase our faith. In other words, the very human disciples might as well be saying, we don't want to stumble. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't want to fall down. We don't want to have to endure hardships. We have pledged our lives to you, Jesus, and your mission and your message of love and redemption. Why do we still have to stumble? Increase our faith so that we can be transformed to avoid these impending disasters. And the Lord replies, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this tree, be uprooted, and it would obey you. Poet and Bishop Porter Taylor, preaching on this same lesson, said, the disciples are willing to do what is reasonable and even exceptional to follow Jesus. But now Jesus begins to ask the impossible tasks, and they don't know how to do them. When they come to this brick wall, they want Jesus to wave some magic wand. They want him to give them some superhuman powers to do what they know in their hearts cannot be done. The disciples do expect some kind of magic because of their discipleship that would enable them to avoid stumbling. But instead, Jesus reveals a much more powerful tool, the ability to face our stumbling without feeling lost or alone. For God's world does contain stumbles, but faith enables and empowers us to be, to learn, and to move forward. With faith, as the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk wrote, we will be astonished and astounded, for the work is being done that you would not believe if you were told. Or as the psalmist sings, put your trust in the Lord. With faith, that ancient trauma or that new tension can be suffered. With faith, that frightening diagnosis or the loss of a job can be withstood. With faith, that person you are trying your darndest to forgive, or the simple anxiety that each new day brings, they can be countenanced. We may be a hot mess, but we've got this with faith. For faith in this instance is not about the amount of belief or the correctness of our dogma. And with faith, our stumbles will not cease, but with faith, we are given the grace to accept that we are all klutzes on this road of life. In an age when self-reliance and independence are held in such high regard, it is difficult to let go of our shame and instead yield our highly prized personal sovereignty over to God. For we will inevitably stumble, and the easy and human route is to think that we can pick ourselves up and we can make things right by our own wits and actions. But that's not always going to be the case. A stumble is bound to come along that will leave us tumbling, unsure of the outcome. But this is where faith comes in. For with faith, even the most drastic and dramatic fall can be endured. For life is change, and it can swerve dramatically from one moment to the next. But God is with us. Just like the disciples who desire to have their faith increased so they can face the demands of discipleship, just like Teresa who looked for God who would carry her through, we can match the world's challenges. And just like the small child that falls and bangs their head on the stairs, we, as mere children of the faith, can find rest and peace in the knowledge that the Lord never leaves our side. For there, God is there. And in our challenges and in our stumbles, with God and faith in God, we will make it through to the other side. Amen.